I've been playing World of Warcraft in some capacity for over half my life now, ever since the original vanilla version. During Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King, I found such pure joy in the game. It's never really left me, even when the game started deviating from what made it so great. There was a time I would wake up happy, eager to play again, even staying up all night because it was so much fun. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this. I've played for a few expansions after those glory days, up until Legion, which I quit after a month or so. I had finally had enough. The game seemed to be going in a direction I didn't enjoy, which was really regrettable. But fortunately, I was able to get my fix on private realms, such as Nostalrius, Netherwing, Warmane, and countless others, as well as on the official classic servers. And by far, the best experience I've ever had on any realm in the past decade or so was on Duskhaven, despite its obvious flaws, and my moderate supply of videos on this channel can attest to this. With this realm shutting down and relaunching in November or so, I found myself with some spare time on my hands to try out different servers. I gave Turtle WoW another shot, and while I totally understand why this is such a massively popular private server, it just isn't for me, for reasons you can check out in my video about it. A week ago or so, I decided to return to retail World of Warcraft after many years. With a 50% discount on Dragonflight, it seemed like perfect timing. I hadn't really played modern World of Warcraft since early Legion, nearly 8 years ago, so I didn't fully know what to expect. But I had my suspicions. I've seen some videos here and there, but of course that's not the same as experiencing it myself. Anyway, in this video I want to document my return to retail World of Warcraft and how it feels to someone who's mostly into private servers and the classic old school game. After downloading and updating the massive 139GB file, this includes classic, I decided to first play a Drag tier Evoker, a completely new race and class, and to experience the new continent, the Dragon Isles, as soon as possible. As the Evoker is like a hero class and they start at level 60, so they can go to the Dragon Isles immediately. All my other characters were brought down to level 40 or so. The maximum level is apparently 70 now, like it was in TBC. Last I remember, the level cap was already over 100 or something, but apparently a squish occurred and we're back to double digits now. Let's start by looking at the game in general, and there's a lot to say about this. First thing, everything looks different. I guess you can call it upgraded, polished, more modern. The unit frames are different, the character models, professions, bags, map, quest icons, quest designs, and so on. There's an edit mode where you can customize your UI quite a lot, like moving your bars around, enlarging your unit frames, cast bar, and so on. This is quite useful. They've basically integrated add-ons like Move Anything and Bartender into the core game. About time, I would say. I also really like the party and raid frame customization options, because having to work with add-ons like Grid or Healbot on private servers is always a hassle. Duskhaven offered an add-on which gave you the option for modern party and raid frames, which was so useful. The talent trees of old are completely gone. From Vanilla to Cataclysm, you had these old school talent trees, the ones we all know and probably love, in Duskhaven and many other private servers. From Mists of Pandaria onwards, we had this silly system of choosing one talent out of 3 every 15 levels or so, which I disliked a lot. And now, I don't know since when, the talent trees look like this. Every level you gain a point, just like before. One level you get a point for your class talent tree, and the other level you get one for your spec talent tree. There are almost no more increased crit by 1% per point talents. Most of the talents here seem impactful, granting you new spells or enhancing a spell's utility or something. I'm not 100% convinced yet these are better than the old school talent trees, because I'm not used to them yet, but I think there's a lot of potential here, and the fact that Duskhaven is implementing these in their relaunched version could be a really good thing. Another aspect of this I really like is the fact that you can readjust and reassign talents on the go. You can just edit them whenever you please, not in combat, and then apply the changes. You can also store talent trees apparently, really useful if you want to swap between an AoE spec or single target spec in a dungeon, for example. Oh, and you can just swap between all your specs as well. Something which definitely comes in handy for people who like to play hybrid classes like druids with plenty of specs. Moving on to the content then, specifically the Dragon Isles. The continent itself looks good, and graphics is always something World of Warcraft has excelled at. The new feature Dragon Riding, or Flying 2.0, is neat and fun, especially once you unlock some of the glyphs. The new quest system isn't really something I enjoy, however. It's very streamlined, I'll give it that. You get a quest, sometimes it just pops up on your screen so you can't miss it, and it'll get marked on your map really clearly with arrows on your minimap and so on, and usually the objective is close by. The general nature of quests hasn't changed much. Kill X amount of this, grab Y amount of that, kill a boss, etc. etc. Once you're done with your 2-3 quests in an area, you'll get directed towards another close by area where you'll repeat the process. This is boring as hell. Sure, you can make the case that it's always been like that, more or less, but in older versions of the game, you go somewhere, you find some quests, and these quests are usually spread around, often in other zones or even other continents. You had to travel and figure out what to do. You frequently had to keep quests in your quest log until you get somewhere, planning your journey around. And this added to the fantasy RPG aspect of World of Warcraft. Yes, this was often not very convenient. So if you want convenience, you can go wrong with retail's sterile quest system, where it's really obvious what to do. Arrows pointing towards sparkly things and so on. You neatly wrap up a quest hub before moving on to the next, rinse repeat, clear the zone, move on to the next, do more of the same thing and so on. I also started leveling a new character to see what that's like. There are a shitload more options now. New class race combinations, and even 10 more pseudo races. Creating a character has so many more customization options, and it seems Blizzard is really embracing the silly wokeness, removing the male and female options, replacing it with body 1 and body 2. WTF, seriously. You can choose your standard starting zone or a new one, Exile's Reach, which is shared among all races as far as I know. This place also has the sterile questing system in place, and is clearly intended for new players, showing them exactly what to do. Leveling is fast and easy in retail, with everything granting experience. And if you've seen my video about Turtle WoW, you might think I enjoy that a lot, but not to this extent. I want my character to be stronger than normal mobs of my level, and about on par with an elite mob, so I can defeat them with some effort, but not a god who just mows down packs of enemies without regard for health or mana. This is a balance I think Duskhaven and Wrath of the Lich King in general have nailed down, although they're leaning towards the overpowered side as well, but not to retail's extent. Anyway, you can basically level wherever you want, whenever you want, due to time walking. Talk to Chromie in Stormwind or Orgrimmar and you can select a timeline. Want to level in the Mists of Pandaria zones at level 10? Go for it. At level 20, want to swap to Draenor? No problem. Go back to Outland at 30? All yours. Everything is available, except Classic Azeroth, only the Cataclysm version. I guess time travel has its limits. Everything is scaled to your level. The mobs, experience, drops, quest rewards, and so on. This gives you a tremendous amount of freedom of choice, and it's a great concept, honestly, really utilizing this wealth of content they've created over the years. I'm a fan of this system in general, if only the characters weren't so godly strong. You can also level up in dungeons, starting at level 10, and just blast your way through whatever dungeons you want, and you'll be grouped with players from all levels and all realms. For example, a level 12 can get paired with level 45s, level 20s, doing Shadowlands dungeons, and every person gets the content, loot, and the mobs scaled to their level. It's a bit of a weird experience, but it does work. This adds a great amount of variety in the dungeons you can do, but it's so easy, even without heirlooms. There's also something called a personal loot system. The boss doesn't drop an item anymore, which everyone can roll on. You've just got a chance of receiving an item yourself when you loot him. In my opinion, this sucks. Sure, you can make the argument that at least now you don't have to roll against other players for a piece of loot, but you're still not guaranteed that something drops. So I would say your odds of getting something are about the same. Personal loot detracts from the MMO part of this game. You're no longer a group of adventurers making your way through a dungeon and claiming its spoils to be divided amongst yourselves. You're just a bunch of randoms thrown together, and loot has lost all meaning. It's not special anymore. Another thing I noticed were the changes in items and stats. There are primary stats now, intellect, strength and agility, and secondary stats such as mastery, haste and crit. Items often have multiple primary stats and they activate whichever stat you need for your spec. That means you can use the same item for all your specs. While this is definitely useful and does away with having to slug around multiple gear sets in your bags, it also severely diminishes the value of items, in my opinion. I understand the whole idea behind the item and stat changes because now there is no more wasted loot, but it all feels so generic and boring. You kill a boss and you maybe get an item which has virtually the same exact stats as the one you have now, with 5 more mastery.
No way! Yes way!
I guess it's an upgrade, but is anyone really getting excited for that? I like my World of Warcraft to have special items, things to really look forward to getting, such as Ashkandi, Drakefang Talisman, Skull of Gul'dan, and so on. Hell, even while leveling, there were plenty of iconic items from lower level dungeons. Yes, there was waste when a vendor strike dropped, but the lows were definitely made up by the highs, when you got a coveted item you really wanted and you had to roll against 15 others who equally wanted it. That's something that seems to be missing in retail. Alright, moving on to gameplay. The gameplay of most classes is way more modern than ever before, and a lot faster paced. We've come a long way from classics spamming one spell to do damage. Now every class and spec has at least a dozen abilities to use during a fight. That's definitely good, it adds more engagement and depth, but for some reason this again felt so sterile to me. Maybe it's the new character models and the spell animations, but everything feels so clean and smooth and watered down, and way different from what I like in my classic World of Warcraft, where the gameplay and spells often feel dirty, raw, and impactful. It's hard to explain because it's just something I feel while playing. There are also a lot of things to collect and do in retail, like a lot, such as hundreds upon hundreds of mounts, pets, tabards, transmog gear, toys. You can even engage in Pokemon battles. And of course, there's a cash shop right there on the game menu. You don't even need to go to their website. How considerate of them. You can buy so much. Realm transfers, faction changes, mounts, pets, transmog, toys, you name it. I'm not a fan of this system at all. I guess it doesn't really detract anything from the game, but it cheapens the whole thing, in my opinion. Is finally getting that special mount from grinding a dungeon 190 times or farming a reputation to Exalted really worth it anymore when someone can just buy a slightly differently colored version of that mount for 25 bucks? Why would you bother? Alright, that about wraps up my thoughts on the current version of World of Warcraft. On paper, everything in retail looks like an improvement. It's more efficient, more streamlined, there's little to no waste regarding items, there's a lot of content, your character is a god, you've got so many side activities to do, stuff to buy, but in practice, and this is of course just my opinion, this isn't engaging at all. It feels bland, boring, predictable, mass-produced and generic. Everything looks made for hyperactive and slightly retarded children, and I'm guessing this is the main audience they're aiming at. Has this game turned into a soulless cash grab? Not yet, at least not completely. There are a lot of great ideas and concepts here, and I can understand its appeal to certain players, but just like in Turtle WoW, this kind of game isn't for me. It's a far cry from what I truly enjoy, so my quest to find another great Classic Plus private server continues. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Are you a private server enthusiast who has played retail recently? How have you fared? Did you enjoy it? Do you agree or disagree with what I said? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this kind of content and want to see more of it, consider liking and subscribing. If you know of any decent private servers, let me know. Thank you all so much for watching and see you in the next video.